Have you ever finished a conversation, stepped away, and instantly felt like you walked out of a room full of judgment? You replay every sentence, every pause, every tiny expression, as if you're searching for hidden meanings no one else even noticed. You rewrite the ending 100 times in your mind, like some unfinished story that demands a better conclusion. If that sounds familiar, then you're not alone, and there's a very real psychological reason behind it. Most people think overthinking is just thinking too much. But it's not your fault. It's your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, just in a world far more complex than the one we're wired for. Let's start with a question: why do ordinary conversations feel like high-stakes exams in your mind? It feels like someone graded your words on a scale of perfect to disastrous, and your self-worth hangs on every red mark. To understand this, we have to first understand what triggers overthinking in the brain. When a conversation ends, most people move on. But for overthinkers, the brain doesn't switch off, it enters review mode. It keeps scanning the interaction for threats. Did I say something wrong? Did they judge me? What did that pause mean? The issue isn't the conversation itself, it's the meaning the brain attaches to it. In evolutionary terms, humans survived by being socially accepted. In the early days of our species, being excluded from the group could mean danger or even death. So our brains became experts at reading social cues, constantly scanning for approval or rejection. This system was once life-saving. But consider how life looks today compared to thousands of years ago. There are no immediate physical threats when someone doesn't text back in 10 minutes. Yet your ancient threat detector keeps lighting up like an alarm. Here's the twist: overthinking is deeply tied to something called the social threat response. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a real threat, like a predator, and a perceived social threat, like someone looking disinterested. Both light up the same circuits. So when you overthink a conversation, your brain is acting like a security guard who never learned to relax. Every pause feels like a red flag. Every expression feels loaded. And instead of just letting it go, your brain loops it again and again like a broken record. Now, here's another layer: self-concept. If you have even a hint of self-doubt, your brain becomes more sensitive to social signals. People who question their worth, even quietly, are more likely to overthink because every conversation becomes a mirror held up to their insecurities. So it's not just about the conversation, it's about what that conversation means to you. Another element that makes overthinking so powerful is something psychologists call rumination. Rumination is when your thoughts circle back to the same topic without resolution, like a hamster running on a wheel. But unlike a hamster, you don't get to burn calories, you just burn energy and peace of mind. Rumination isn't casual reflection, it's repetitive and unhelpful. It doesn't solve the problem. It just relives it. And yet so many of us fall into this pattern without realizing it. This is where the psychology gets even more fascinating, because your brain gets a reward from rumination. Yes, seriously. Every time you replay that conversation, your brain releases a small burst of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones make you alert and engaged. That feels intense, and your brain, craving stimulation, keeps returning to the same topic. Even though it's painful, your nervous system gets hooked on the emotional charge. It's similar to why people replay arguments in their heads, even when it makes them miserable. Now, you might be thinking, so I'm stuck with this forever. No, and here's where understanding the psychology gives you power. One key factor in overthinking is ambiguous social cues. When someone's words or expressions are unclear, your brain fills in the blanks, often with the worst-case interpretation. That's why conversations that end abruptly, with pauses or without closure, leave the mind racing. Your brain hates uncertainty. So when the conversation ends without a clear emotional resolution, your subconscious says, "We need to interpret this. We need meaning. We need closure." Here's where most people go wrong. They think they need external closure. They want a text back. They want reassurance. They want the other person to confirm their value. But the truth is, closure is internal. It's not something someone else gives you. It's something you create for yourself. Understanding why overthinking happens gives you your first step out of its grip. What's the next step? It starts with awareness. When you catch yourself replaying a conversation, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to understand or am I trying to judge myself? There's a big difference. Understanding is productive. Judgment is emotional punishment. When you recognize you're judging yourself, that's where you intervene. Instead of replaying every detail, Ask a different question: what outcome am I trying to get from rethinking this? If you're trying to prepare for future conversations, that's useful. Your thoughts are not facts. They are events in your mind, not truths about reality. When you realize that, the emotional charge starts to drop. Another crucial factor is self-compassion. Overthinkers often hold themselves to a perfection standard they never apply to others. You would never ruthlessly analyze someone else's text or tone, yet you do it to yourself all the time. So if you catch yourself thinking, "What if I sounded stupid?" Stop. Replace it with, "I spoke as best as I could in the moment." Not because you need to be perfect, but because being perfectly imperfect is human. Here's another mind shift: conversations are shared constructions. Both people shape them. So if something feels awkward or unclear, it doesn't mean it's your fault. It simply means two imperfect minds tried to connect, and sometimes that leaves gaps. But those gaps are not evidence of rejection, they are evidence of complexity. The final psychological insight involves expectations. If you expect every conversation to go perfectly, your brain treats any deviation like a threat. That makes overthinking even more intense. But when you begin to see conversations as practice, not performance, your brain relaxes. You stop trying to score perfect points. You start seeing communication as fluid, messy, human. This doesn't mean conversations won't matter. They do. But they stop becoming battlegrounds for your sense of worth. That sensitivity can be a strength if you learn to direct it purposefully rather than letting it run on autopilot. Instead of endlessly replaying the past, you start asking better questions. What do I want my next conversation to feel like? What patterns do I notice, and what can I learn from them? How can I show up more fully next time, not more perfectly? And suddenly, your nervous system stops treating every conversation like a threat. It starts seeing it as an opportunity, not to prove your worth, but to express it. Because the psychology of overthinking isn't about fear. It's about meaning. Your brain is trying to make sense of social interaction because you are wired to belong. The key is not to stop thinking. It's to think with curiosity instead of judgment. And when you do that, the conversations stop haunting the back of your mind. Instead, they become lessons, experiences, and stories you can carry forward, not anchors that drag you back.